In the year 1986, the size of the Ugandan economy. Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of the Citizens Chat Show on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. Today, the Citizens Chat Show goes to Kololo and we are talking about the State of the Nation address that happened yesterday. The President came to Parliament and had a lot to talk about this country, the region, and by extension the entire world now. We want to assess the speech he made in Parliament, the good things he said, the bad, and how we're going to continue moving as a country now. Joining me in that conversation is a panel of distinguished Ugandans who will do justice to this topic and help us understand what actually the President was talking about and whether it met the standards of what a state of the nation should be. And I will introduce them. Starting from my extreme left, from the National Resistance Movement, the Director External Affairs, Major Awich Pollar. Major, good afternoon and welcome to the show.
Good afternoon to you and to the viewers, and greetings from the mighty NRM.
Thank you, Major. Next to Major is Professor Mwambustya Ndebesa. He is a professor of political history and a political analyst. Professor, good afternoon and you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you and good afternoon to the listeners out there. I'm glad to be here to share with you issues of national importance.
Thank you, Professor. Next to Professor is from the Center for Constitutional Governance, the Executive Director, Dr. Bireete. Doctor, good afternoon and you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good afternoon, viewers.
Thank you, Doctor. And last but not least is from Kyambogo University, the head of the Department of Political Science and History, Dr.Robert Ojambo. Doctor, good afternoon and you're most welcome.
Good afternoon, my pleasure.
Thank you, Doctor. The State of the Nation address. I want to start with you, Dr. Sarah. The President of Uganda speaks on a series of occasions. Recently, he was speaking at the Matters Day. He has televised addresses usually, and so many others. Help us understand, and for the benefit of the viewer, what is so unique and special about the State of the Nation address that should invite Ugandans all the time to keep paying their attention to this particular communication from the President?
The State of Nation address is a constitutional obligation, first of all, and it's mandatory that the state, every once a year, at the beginning of the session, after passing of Parliament, must address the nation through Parliament. This address is meant to give accountability to the citizens. The State of the Nation is provided for by the Constitution, and through that provision, the President is supposed to account to the citizens on what has transpired in the financial year that is outgoing and usher in the new financial year, and it's followed with the reading of the budget. This State of the Nation should be an accountability statement with a focus on issues that were in the budget in the previous year, give an account of what the performance has been, and direct the country on the new priority areas for the financial year. The State of the Nation address for 2023 had 17 issues. And my focus will be on issue number 14 on corruption. In every State of the Nation for 38 years, the President talks about corruption. Sounds very strong, saying how he's going to crush the corrupt. But in 2023, during the State of the Nation address, he said that God is watching. Also, God is there. I don't know whether he had given up as the CEO of Uganda, that the fight for corruption should be left to God. Because
metaphysical now.
Because as we talk today, it is still a crisis. And in the State of the Nation address, he has just also repeated that rhetoric. The corrupt are finished. We are going to crush them. And I know all of them, and I have evidence. Of course, every Ugandan knows how corruption takes place. He again referred to the people who pick bribes for people who want to meet him, the bribes, the connivance between the Ministry of Finance, accounting officers, and Parliament. But also you have a crisis in Parliament that has led to sanctions. So what is the actual state of the nation in Uganda today? One would have thought that the president would even be precise and focus on issues. First, give us an accountability of the 17 areas that were highlighted in 2023. How have they been performed, delivered on? How have they performed in the outgoing financial year? What are the pending issues? What is work in progress? What has been completed or achieved? Then look at the current challenges the nation is facing. These challenges include the national state security. You look at issues of national but also internal and external threats to the citizens. Just today, another person was kicked on the streets by the street gangs that have taken over Kampala. Security is one of the biggest achievements of NRM, and rightly so. It is one of the areas where you can give NRM an average of 70% in terms of performance. I think it's their top most performing area. But Kampala has been taken over by street gangs to the extent that you can't be safe walking, holding anything, whether you have an empty bag, whether you have a phone. The other day, I just attempted to walk from Ntinda, Stanbic Bank, to my office. Two people deliberately followed me, looking like thugs, and I had to branch. Immediately leave the road and go in a restaurant and call somebody to pick me up because I knew the purpose. You have police instead of securing people. These things, black spots, that Ugandans should avoid these. Instead of occupying those spots and kicking out the street gangs. The second area is the macroeconomic stability. The president has said on how they've managed inflation, this, stable foreign exchange for Ugandans, credit ratings, but the credit, issued by Bank of Uganda is usually never followed. It may be, an indicator for investors and people outside, because banks always double that credit ratings by Bank of Uganda. Then, of course, you have to go to the performance of GDP. Figures, financial figures for this country do not carry the real picture of what citizens are going through. The figures are rosy, 5.5% economic growth. But what are the citizens going through? What is the reality of the economy? If you asked for citizens' views on the economy, apart from the people who have access to steal taxpayers' money, I don't think any citizen can say that the economy is doing well. The only exception are those who steal public resources. Those are the only people who I think can say that our economy is doing well. The cost of living is so high. There is little money in circulation, businesses are closing. Even data from URI shows the big taxpayers are winding up, 93% rate of the biggest taxpayers. So which economy is producing this growth that we see in the figures? If you look at the budget, the country envisages to collect 31.2 trillion. But we have a budget of 72 trillion, meaning that we are in 40 trillion deficit. Out of that 72 trillion budget, 46% is for debt servicing. 34 trillion debt servicing. So if you get the money that belongs to Ugandans, 31.2 trillion, and put it there like our own assured source of money, out of this, you need 8 trillion to pay salaries. That's our age bill. 8 trillion goes off, you remain with the
About 24.
24 trillion. Out of that 24 trillion, you pay debt. Because these are statutory obligations. You must pay salaries, you must pay debt. So we pay debt of 34 trillion. We remain in deficit of 10 trillion. Just from our own money. So you must borrow. If you say that let's get our money from revenue and meet our statutory obligations with no work done, we are in deficit of 10 trillion without doing anything. This is the economy that we are talking about.
Wow.
If you look at other key areas, you need to look at, of course, the balance of trade, our national reserves. We have moved down from being secure for 6 months, 4 months, or 3.5. You look at our international relations, we are getting sanctions for top officials left, right, and center. Uganda is the only country, and the first in history to have the speaker being sanctioned, Speaker of Parliament.
And she
We have
remains
made-
in office.
And she remains in office. We have made history. It's the first time for a Speaker of Parliament to be sanctioned by the international community. She remains in office, so it's Uganda that is going to carry on business with a sanctioned speaker. In her opening remarks during the State of Nation address, she was boasting on how she chaired the Commonwealth Speakers Forum, how Uganda is the chair of the Commonwealth Africa chapter, how her personally as a speaker is the chairperson of the Commonwealth Speakers Forum. But the mother of Commonwealth has told her to go to hell through sanctions. So she won't chair any program. She won't chair any platform where Britain or United Kingdom is concerned, because they don't want her association. But that was her boasting line in the State of Nation address. Maybe she should have been fair to say, this would have been the situation, but we have a problem. And Uganda is the chair up to 2027, but with a sanctioned speaker.
You see, Doctor, what you mentioned now, what does it mean for the position we hold in those offices? Because if we cannot chair these meetings, then do the meetings cease to happen? Does Uganda maybe leave for the vice chair from another country? What happens?
You see, the most logical thing to do is for the sanctioned speaker to step aside. But do you expect logic from this government? I don't expect logic from this government myself. But that's the right thing to do. That you find another speaker who is fit to transact business nationally, bilaterally, and internationally. Because the current one is not.
Wow, thank you, Doctor. Professor, when we talk the state of the nation, like Dr. Sarah has told us, we expect an account of the things that happened in the past 1 year. When you read from what the president said, and by extension, what he has been saying for the many years he's been around, is the president giving a fair account of the happenings in this country and the projections for the future?
Thank you for that. I wouldn't expect him to do that because he's a politician, and every politician must legitimize himself or herself in power. And there are certain things which would undermine his power and authority if he mentioned them. So he will selectively mention those that will buttress his power, even if they are not the most standing out issues for the country. Now we are talking about the State of the Nation address. But on that one, maybe even if you may fault him for being selective, I think the opposition leaders should also be given space to point out those which would have selectively left out, and so that they also selectively bring out some of those issues. If all of them, the political class, have the capacity to identify the deep challenges of the country and bring them to the fore so that the nation discusses them and we find a way forward out of this underdevelopment. But if you wanted my opinion about what I expect the state of the nation to address so that Ugandans can address it squarely, I would start with lack of political consensus, a minimum political consensus. Personally, I am worried about Uganda, and as a historian and analyst, I have a big concern about the future of Uganda. I see uncertainty ahead. And I will give you glaring examples, although there are other undercurrents that we don't see. When you hear members of the opposition saying, we are going to boycott the State of the Nation address, that's lack of political consensus in the nation. This is against the background of iPod. You remember iPod? Which also failed. There was no political consensus. When you look at members of parliament, even within the NRM, some are coming up with a censor motion of these other commissioners. Others are refusing it. Others are removing their signature. You see there is no political consensus. Of course, even in the opposition, whether it is FDC, whether it is NUP, whether it is UPC, whether it is DP, there is no political consensus. Now, when you find a country, any country that does not have a political consensus, its future is not certain. And this is what we should be addressing, pointing out the lack of minimum political consensus in how it can be addressed. But I don't see that one being addressed. And it is glossed over, and yet what we are lacking in Uganda is that minimum political consensus. You cannot plan for a nation. You cannot have national planning when you have no nation. What are you doing now? National planning when there is no nation to talk about. So we should identify priority number one for Africa and for Uganda, nation building, and find ways and means of constructing a nation, forging a nation. Since independence, Africa has been grappling with failure to build, to forge a national identity. Instead, we have got tribal identities, regional identities, OB's identities, I don't know which identities. We are not getting a national identity. Two, I wanted to say that I think some people would say that facts speak for themselves or statistics don't lie. Statistics lie in the sense that you selectively give statistics. For example, in the State of the Nation address, you will hear how Uganda has increased its export earnings. True. That's a fact. But where that statistics is lying or hiding is that we are not told the trade deficit. For example, the trade deficit in Uganda now, I think it's around 400 million US dollars. US dollars, not shillings. That's a trade deficit. Have you told the nation that we have got that trade deficit? When you are talking about revenue authority having capacity now to collect this amount of trillions of dollars, are you telling us the debt deficit? I mean the debt. That the country is choking on debts up to 50% of the national GDP. Because that can't be a healthy nation. That's a serious question. When you are talking about savings, I don't know how much of our country saves as a country and how much citizens also save. You find our ratio of GDP today to saving rates. Uganda has got very low ones, lower than sub-Saharan African average. So we can address some of those challenges as very, very, very pertinent. But that is at the economic side. And the State of the Nation address should not only address the economy and finances and revenue only. This is the State of the Nation address, not the State of the Economy address. We are talking about education, for example. We are living in a knowledge age. You cannot say that the country is moving forward unless you clearly point out the indicators of technology adoption and technology development in the country and education. I think all of us, listeners out there, all of us here know the performance of our schools, where you find, did they say in primary, is it 80,000 people failed with F or something like that? If you look at the quality of education, even compared to the East African community, the traditional one, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, Uganda is said to be performing very poorly in terms of education. And when you look at the enrollment, we enrolled something like 80 million in P1, but how many do exams after P7? You find they are less than 1 million or thereabout. Those are serious matters in the area of education. And unless you have got an education base, a technological base, we shall not make a breakthrough like our counterparts in Southeast Asia. Sometimes we say Southeast Asian countries like South Korea was at our level at independence and they have left us. They may have been at the same level with us at the level of GDP, but not technological base, but not education. We can move to other indicators, social indicators like health. How many hours do patients wait to get treatment in a government hospital? If at all they will get treatment there. What is our mortality rate, child mortality rate, and maternal mortality rates? How are we addressing other health concerns, primary health concerns, such as nutrition security? You've heard she comes from Bushenyi. Bushenyi used to pride itself that it is a model district. Look at the malnutrition rate in Bushenyi. It is actually among the worst in Uganda. At one time, got stunted children below the age. I am putting you on the spot because you claim you are a model district.
At one time, it was the highest a few years ago.
Highest in raw malnutrition.
Malnutrition.
Now, that's why statistics lie. Because there is a lot of Matoke ferret from Igara and coming to Kampala. You see always where they have food. There is in nutrition and food insecurity in Bushenyi.
We are being punished for having supported the Nyamurunga.
So, if I can use the concept of security to round up,
Yes.
Can the State of the Nation address, look at security, physical security in all cases? I was in Ntungamo in the last 3 weeks and I was listening to the local radio stations there. Almost every other announcement, it was talking about people are stealing my coffee. You know, there is coffee harvesting there. They are stealing my coffee. Whoever arrests somebody who is picking my coffee, there is a reward of 1 million. Then another one is announcing. At that level, you see, there is a level of property insecurity in the countryside, let alone the insecurity that you're experiencing in Kampala. So we can look at that insecurity at the level of the nation, existential insecurity of having no political stability. If today you were asked Ugandans who is going to be the next president in the next 10 years, or which form of government are we going to have, you find somebody saying, oh, wait a minute, or why it is going to take which direction, I am not sure. By the way, they will start speaking in tongues.
Mzee anapanga.
And then you and let us talk about environmental insecurity. It is said that within about 20 years, our biomass has been degraded up to 8%.
True.
The forest cover. That is environmental insecurity. But I don't have even statistics about soil erosion. You see, when you have soil erosion continuously, you are not doing very well. Even if you produce more and more and more, there will be a time when you will plunk down because of that soil infertility. So when we're looking at security, we look at physical security, we look at environmental security, we look at nutritional security, we look at food security, we look at economic security, income insecurity, where many Ugandans are now choking with debt. Uganda as a country is choking with debt. But there are very many Ugandans who don't sleep because of this kafuna, these small debts they have incurred. Very many have left their homes. Others have lost their wives to Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. They have gone to look for money to come and pay the debts. So when you look at the indebtedness of the people, even at the community level, there is financial insecurity. We can go on and on and on and talk about these forms of insecurity, and I think we can even use that parameter and describe issues in terms of insecurity, and you'll find that the bigger picture painted on the surface is not actually what is happening underground. You know, surfaces can deceive. It's like cow dung. When cow dung, the cow has defecated, and it is the sun, there is a lot of sunshine like we are experiencing. Within 4 hours, you find the cow dung dry, and you think it is dry. You just put there your foot and you will sink in the cow dung. So, because, why am I mentioning this one? Look at all the indicators of stability of a country in terms of security, but also economic indicators in terms of debt, indebtedness, in terms of the trade deficit, in terms of technological base. How many Ugandans patent copyrights, is it patent trademarks and all that, that they have discovered something? How many? We are living in a technological age. We shall not catch up unless we do that one. And when you look at our industrial base, it is still very, very low. It is not competitive in the world, the industrial base. The industrial base. So when you look at most of these real indicators, whether they are social indicators, whether they are political indicators, whether they are financial indicators, environmental indicators, human security indicators, human development, I think what the State of the Nation address should address, if I may ask that, concentrate on and be guided on, it should look at human development indices or indicators more than the so-called economic indicators, because ultimately the economy is supposed to serve man, not just having rosy pictures that sometimes even these multinational companies and multinational institutions like World Bank and IMF, they will always give you those GDP rosy pictures. They will avoid human development indicators. What is the state of your health? What is the state of your hospitals? What is the state of your schools? What is the state of your research? What is the state of your capability for developing new technologies? They don't normally look at that one. They go for GDP figures, which figures are reflecting actually some of those monies they bring here. Like Uganda is now developing when you look at world economic indicators. But what are those indicators? What are those developments that we're having? You are seeing very many high rises in Kampala. Do those translate into the lives of the people and livelihoods? You are looking at maybe the machinery imported for the oil industry. So when they calculate that one, then they come to GDP figures, it will become in the middle income status. But when you look at the human development indicators, the poverty indicators, you go to UBOS. UBOS is a government department. It will show you the human poverty indicators in Uganda. These two fellows come from some of those regions, especially the east and the north. You need to look at UBOS poverty figures. Multidimensional poverty rates.
We don't have posts in government.
You look at the multidimensional poverty indicators in Uganda, produced by UBOS. Then you can go and ask the head of state to give us a State of the Nation address in terms of spatial inequality. Spatial inequality meaning the inequality between regions and regions, and then class indicators to see the inequality between the rich and the poor. Indicators show in Uganda, all statistics that there is a very big gap between those who are poor and those who are rich in terms of class.
Yeah.
Those who are rich are becoming richer and richer. Those who are poor are becoming poorer. In terms of spatial inequalities, the regions that are relatively rich are becoming better off. Those which are poorer are becoming poorer. And when you have a country where there are those inequalities, then the future is not rosy, because inequality is a source of wars, conflicts, and polarization.
Thank you, Prof. Major, I know you listen to Professor very candidly. Now, first, does the President consult the Secretariat when he's to give the State of the Nation? And indeed, if he does, is this what the party gave the President? And is the party very happy about the state of Uganda?
Yes, I have listened to the professor and Dr. Sarah. My only worry is, will I have the minutes to explain what you have asked?
Now you have.
Assuming you give me the amount of minutes, then I will answer you.
I give you some of mine.
The
Yeah.
minutes that we were given, you should have them.
It is true that whatever the president is talking, the mother of it is the party, and therefore the party is headed by Secretariat. Why? Because the State of the Nation is a mirror reflection of what Uganda is as it is now. The only extension is that it is Uganda as it is in 1 year. So you put Uganda on that wall for 1 year, put a mirror here, that is the State of the Nation address. And that's what the president is doing. Now, he could choose to package it in his own way, say by explanatory system, by giving some bits of history and giving a bit of international examples to illustrate, but in effect is giving a mirror reflection of Uganda in 1 year. This is what it is, and you know a mirror never lies, and the president will not lie. So why I said it is from the party is that this 1 year is one of the years that we had proposed to the people in our manifesto. Remember that we, the party, are the ones who had a social contract with the people. We marketed our manifesto, and including our flag bearer, which was President Museveni. So the people voted in it, voted for it. So it is in that manifesto that we had anticipated that 23-24, this is what we would have done. And therefore we tried to do that, and now put it together with the objective reality that derives from the condition of the ground. It is what reflects the state of the nation. Therefore, the president, in short, could be talking on a party manifesto over the year, put together with the material conditions on the ground, e.g., the rain that fell, or the insecurity that came, or the dry season that was, and the availability of money there too. But this is a reflection of a party manifesto over the year that we had anticipated earlier, and we marketed to the people and they voted for us. So, and that is what it is. Now, there are issues that needed to be commented on, especially the issue of corruption that the president has said. I saw a cartoon, which I don't know whether it is Spire or somebody. A young lady journalist was asking the president in the cartoon, that talk about corruption, are you serious? He said, I'm very, very serious. What shows how serious you are? He said, you go and see my speeches. I've been very serious. Then he said, are you going to be serious, going to put more effort? I'm going to be even more serious in
the speeches.
In the speech. But of course, these are satire. But the truth is, it is not true that the president and government has only been making speech on corruption. What has been done on corruption is the legal framework. Governments have ability to initiate laws. Laws have been put. That is not speech. 2, the institutional framework. The institutions that do investigate have been put in place. That is not speech. 3, the real arrest and investigation. It has been done. Back to institutional framework. We even have
the moral framework.
We even have anti-corruption court. I have always said that the next thing is to have anti-corruption prison. So these are not speeches. These are not speeches. So you have the laws, you have the institutions, you have the arrest, you have the investigation, you have the court, you have the prisons. These are not speeches. But of course, corruption is done by human beings who have brains. They also know how to dodge laws, how to create new systems, how to, especially now in the current era of technology. They are also human beings. So what it calls on the state is that you have now to also be keen on those new modes adopted by the corrupt. The moral authority, Professor, is there, because if the moral authority wasn't there, there wouldn't be these initiations of all these things I've mentioned. So please, the corrupt will be dealt with, no worry. Now, on the issue of Ministry of Finance that the President has said, I really beg we as a party and government should be serious, because you see the way Ministry of Finance is organized is that they have ministries allocated to officers, local government and whatever is under this, defense and securities and so on. So I think now the finding is that those line desk officers connive with the PS in those various ministries and then with Parliament, and they put it in. These are really legislated corruption, which is very dangerous, and I'm glad the President has drawn the attention. For example, somebody can even reach a point of officially passing in the budget that they are going to have a workshop, but each workshop, the bottle will cost, a bottle of water will be 5,000. Therefore, it means that if this money is officially passed and it is water for 5,000, then it is legitimate right from the initiation. And yet we all know that in whatever workshop, whether it is in Soroti or Mbarara, a bottle of water wants to be 5,000. So you can see that if we didn't have the moral capacity, or the President didn't have, it wouldn't have zeroed down to this changing format of corruption. So it will be dealt with. Now the other issue that comes out is the economy. Okay, we have been talking of the economy in as far as we take indicators. I think those who have been taking indicators have been doing it selectively. But overall, we have in the recent past known what a bad economy is in Uganda, or a no economy at all. You take from a Means regime even up to a Bottas regime. In this view, therefore, I would invite Ugandans not only to assess in the indicators that are put, for example, abilities to which were mentioned by the professors, because human needs are never satisfied. Even if you make people rich today, or even rich countries as they are, like Singapore or whatever, they are never satisfied. Therefore, with our recent past, the best way to make assessment on the current economy is the availability of goods and services. Professor knows very well that there was a time when salt used not to be in the country, when sugar used never to be in the country, when soap never used to be in the country. People were collecting leaves to wash clothes. So rather than take the indicators of economic performance by the ability to satisfy needs, when in fact we know that needs are elastic, and even under whatever economy, no needs will be satisfied. No country will come and say, okay, we are now happy. We would rather see the performance of the economy by the availability of goods and services. Goods, services, for example, if people want to look for school, will they walk 10 kilometers? Or if they want to go to the hospital or clinics, are there clinics? Or if they want engineers to build houses, are they there? So if you judge from the availability of goods and services, remember not in the recent past, a beer which is sold was allocated district by district, that Bushenyi will take 400 crates this month. Kitgum will be given 300. These days, the goods you need to advertise to have it sold. And those goods have not gone rotting, which means since we operate a liberal economy, supply and demand, it means that people are able to buy those goods and services. These clinics would have closed. People can. Now, we can of course keep improving, and that's why there's government interventions to ensure that more money is in the hands of the citizens. But it's not correct to use such indicators which you very well know the inelasticity of human demands, rather than use the assessment of the economy on the availability of goods, because we can juxtapose in the recent past of Uganda. That is, so the economy is not doing bad at all. Things are okay. The other thing I want to talk
We
about
have
is
a
the lack.
deficit.
No, I haven't addressed that. I wanted to address the person to person. Is there a lack of political consciousness? I mean, consensus. Professor says there's a lack of political consensus. You see, our constitution and the nature of our society is first you have free thinking. Freedom is greatly enshrined in our constitution. Freedom to associate, freedom to think, freedom to talk. Now, once you have such a thing like that freedom, it is difficult to find one thinking professor. It is difficult. There are minimum indicators that we can see a consensus on. For example, do we agree to have election as a country every 5 years? Yes, we do. Do we agree, for example, not to go to rebellion? Everybody knows that it's not good to go for rebellions. Do we agree to go to courts? And courts running in Kabale, in Moroto, and everywhere. These are the minimum consensus. But if you talk in terms of consensus on who you want to be a ruler, or who you want to be, what nature of government, it is varied because you have different political thinking. There are minimum consensus that I have mentioned that form a consensus in a country. Otherwise, you cannot talk of a general consensus. Now, where there's no consensus, the law provides for adjudication, okay? And the Constitution provides already for lack of consensus how to proceed. So the main consensus generation or consensus that we could agree that can tear a country is the one I've told you. If people say we cannot go for election, if people say we are going for rebellion, or people say you meant things like we don't want to go to courts, let judges do their own things, that will be the matter. But Professor, you will not anticipate a consensus by any dream on individual interest apart from the one I have mentioned. So far so good. Finally, the issue of statistics. Professor insists the statistics may lie. Of course, to every general rule there's an exception. Maybe the exception to the rule. But the general rule is that figures speak for itself. And we are at a very tricky area where World Bank predicts good figure for the economic development. And I do not think that World Bank don't talk on the statistics that they are saying. It is only that we have not unpackaged. But the detail of World Bank statistics indicates all this. It would be a gross error for a world body like World Bank to superficially talk of GDP and end there. No. Look at detailed research of World Bank. And to World Bank to come with a good figure for Uganda at this time, when we don't have good relationship, then we are very magical. We are lucky. We would expect a bad thing. So data speak, and it is we should abide by it. For example, you have health data. Health data indicate we have eliminated polio, death rate, childbirth rate, what you call child mortality, has reduced. Life expectancy has increased. So all the figures are there. You are talking of poverty. There's indicators that poverty has dropped. No. Poverty has dropped. So data are there and they are good data. And of course, where for me as a person, there is no poverty, of course.
Okay, of course, we know you are liberated.
But I'm talking of Uganda. I'm talking of Uganda. So figures don't lie, and all figures are as good. Therefore, the state of the nation today, you want to ask a question?
I want to, from what you are saying, you said the economy is very okay, the health is very okay, the education is very okay. Yeah, borrowing from one of the, ministers, like you see.
Human development is okay, economic development
going
is okay.
Up. And the party is happy.
Okay.
I have explained to you the data that are clearly on record. Death rate is reduced, life expectancy is increased, that is the child mortality is reduced.
Nutrition
this is on
okay.
Nutrition, and the case of Dr. Sarah's village is that Bushenyi has matoke, and the nutrition is about a balanced diet. So Bushenyi people have tended to eat matoke with greens, and therefore they have not concentrated on animal protein. They have not concentrated on animal protein. They rely on plant protein. So that is the cause, and that is on the UNICEF research or even WHO, but I think UNICEF, because they were tracking.
That's an indicator.
So it's an anomalous. That is.
So there is no poverty.
Thank you, and maybe that means government should.
No, I'm talking of
interest.
Uganda, but regional disparities is there, and we have always acknowledged. Even in our manifesto, we mention the regional disparities, and we always strive and call on the party to work on it, and the line ministries that we give to. Regional disparities is there. We can't run away from it, and even the president will mention it. He will mention it again and again of regional disparity. So don't make it look like if it comes from another person's mouth, then it is news, but it comes from our mouth as well.
And what
Thank you, Major.
We are working on it.
Thank you. I want to bring in Dr. Ojambo here.
By putting resources there, by deploying human resource there, and by actively making active interventions in those areas.
Thank you, Major, for that submission. Dr. Ojambo, when you listen to Major Awich from the mighty NRM party, he says things are very okay, the education is okay, the economics is excellent, but he also says on the issue of corruption that indeed the president is going to act. He says it will be dealt with, and many times when the president says such things, the last we hear about the same is on that particular speech. Nothing seems to happen later. In this, the very recent, the one of yesterday, do you think now there is something to be done about the corruption, about the things he talked about, the connivance between Ministry of Finance, Parliament, and accounting officers, and a series of other challenges in the country?
So you want to tell me that the president has just come to Uganda and they have given him a list of things and is looking at them and is promising you that this one I will be doing and doing and doing. You forget that the president has been here for the last 50 years. He has been very active in politics for the last 50 years in Uganda, since school to the bushes in Tanzania and the bushes in Luwero, then a president. So the president has been here. So you don't need to be deceived that the president now is going to act. The president has been around. He's not a foreigner who has been brought like a commando to resolve our problems. But let's go back, and what he says is what I expect from him. Really, I would be shocked if he said something different. So let's go to the State of Nation address, which my colleagues here have already given their views on. The State of Nation address is a very important function that is fulfilled by a president every year, and it is a constitutional matter, as Sarah said. The only problem is that in Uganda, people make you to think that abnormal things are normal. In fact, in Uganda, what is abnormal is what becomes normal. And in COVID, they were calling it new normal, instead of just saying abnormal. The president that I know, sometimes you may think he does not know the things, that maybe he doesn't know what a State of Nation address is. He does know, because the president is a very educated person, and he has been in politics for a long time. He has watched all the leaders almost in East Africa from 1970. He has been around, and he has known what a State of Nation address is. But he deliberately chooses to come and change it to a State of Story address, to tell you stories. And he does so not because he is ignorant, but is deliberate, because he has nothing to tell people. He has nothing to tell people about the year. He has nothing to talk about child mortality rate. He has nothing to talk about new schools that have been constructed. He doesn't know. If he knows, he doesn't want to say them because they will embarrass the government. He doesn't want to talk about, those days he could talk about new roads, kilometers of roads that have been created. But now there are more roads that need repair than constructing new ones. The other day I was in Luwero and I was telling a man there that roads are very bad. I was traveling in the areas of Chimwanyi, areas of Wabitungulu, in Luwero, the Mecca. The roads are so bad, you'd reach somewhere and you can't go through. You have to go back and they show you in the village another route that can take you somewhere. So this old man asked me a question that, you man, how do you expect roads in Luwero to be okay when in Kampala they are pouring soil in potholes? And I said, people here are bright. He said, now how do you expect Luwero to have good roads when Sapolo Kagwa Road is like a river? Like now when it rains, you don't know where the road is. You have just to keep guessing. If you land in a ditch, that's your problem. So the State of Nation address, to be brief, is supposed to give an account of what they envisaged last year. Because you see, a State of Nation address is given a few days to the reading of the budget, which is one of the most important functions. And these are the only few days that you find the three arms of government fused together in one place, listening to one another. The president is there, the speaker is there, and the chief justice is there. And therefore, somebody is supposed to give you an account. For those who did commerce, you draw a balance sheet. In simple terms, you draw a balance sheet. You say 2022, 23, 2023, 24, because we are balance and balance carried forward. So it's supposed to say, on this, last year we promised this. Of course, he did well at the beginning. When you look at, for example, when he was talking about the budget and the other things, last year we had a budget of 52 trillion. It has now gone to 72. By 20, it has gone by 20 trillion. Tick, good. So we go in the budget, we look at how much money did we project to collect that last year? 26 trillion. How much did we collect? This amount. What was the deficit? It is on that analysis that now you plan for the next budget. What do? Last year they projected to collect 26. They collected 24. But what do? They now project 31. I don't know projecting from what. Last year you did not reach what you wanted to do. Now this year you project even by, you say no, it will not just be 26. It will be 31. Now 31 to go against what? When you look at the expenditures that we have, which take us to 72, you have 31 projection collection from URA. You have 34 trillion to pay debts. You have close to 9 trillion to deal with administration, the administration of a country. That's what Sarah was calling paying of wages and all those things. Then, what will you put in health? What will you put in education? What will you put in what he tried to call human capital development? That's the most important. How much is being put there? Almost nothing. So I can see people out there waiting that there's going to read a budget. They are just going to read for us statements, but statements that do not make sense in our lives. Number two, who is these people addressing? By the way, that is another anomaly. There is a State of Nation address, but the man is addressing a handful of people. The MPs seated in the tent and a few people in Kampala who understand English and who can afford a radio. You saw the statistics of how many people have a radio set in Uganda when we came to COVID and they wanted to teach on radio, because I was a participant there. It was miserable. The TV was even worse. So the president is speaking there on TV and on radio. Those are the two avenues, and the few MPs who are there. The rest of the countryside, I can bet, they even did not know that the president is speaking. some are in the garden, some are suffering to see what they will eat. About 70% don't know about that thing. They don't know. So it is just a ritualistic thing to fulfill what Sarah was saying, constitutional mandate. That's why they quote the constitution according to this and this and this, so that the exalted elites are happy. That you see democracy is in the country, and that's what he comes to preach to us, that democracy is there. But he's speaking to who? Because the next thing would have been, tomorrow in the newspapers, they would write this in the newspapers. I mean, in the next day, which is now Friday, the speech is going to be in newspapers, New Vision and what have you. How many people in Uganda read New Vision or newspapers? In fact, the local ones are collapsing slowly. The people know how to speak some little English, but somebody to pick a paper. I've seen in our neighbor countries where they write in Swahili, in Rwanda where they write in their language, and other places. You find even in the village somebody has a newspaper, because they can read in Kiswahili. They can read here. And maybe a few areas of Buganda and Iteso where there is a top, and Western Uganda where there's... But you will find that these are few primary school teachers. The majority don't even read the things. They don't know what is happening.
They even collapsed Etopo and
I was dreaming.
And the other one, is what?
I was dreaming.
Orumuri. They collapsed.
I was dreaming. I was dreaming. Then I was dreaming. So this State of Nation address, this State of Nation address is ritualistic. First of all, you listen to what the president says in the State of Nation address, and really you say, are we a serious country? In fact, animals and birds are more clever than human beings, I tend to sense. Anybody, if had instinct of those two things, would have migrated from this country and gone elsewhere. You know, birds sense, like that's why when earthquakes, these earthquakes take place in where they do, and tremors, they don't kill birds and animals. They will have migrated 3 days, 1 week, because they sense danger.
To Congo or to South Sudan?
Wherever they go. So Ugandans, if we were serious, we would have even migrated from this place long ago, because there is a lot of danger
from our country.
Yes, there is a lot of danger. If you are living in a country which is projecting to collect money 31 trillion, but debts alone, the debt portfolio which they must pay is 34. So it means that we still have less 3 trillion to just pay debts.
Yes.
Before even reaching consumption. Are you getting me? Yes?
I do.
Do you know what they call loan crafting? This country of yours practices loan crafting. Loan crafting, for viewers who may not know what I'm saying, is where you are indebted so much. So you borrow from Phillip to pay Sarah. Now you create a new debt here. But you are sure that at least this one can give me some time. Then you go and borrow from Major, because he has money, to survive for today. So you have another debt. Then Sarah comes. Who did I borrow? What? Sarah comes. When Sarah comes, I now go and borrow from him to first pay you. Sarah, I say, you wait. You just gave me yesterday. That's what the country is doing. The country has reached a level. When we were studying commerce in senior 3, in shorts, they were telling us the country only borrows from the central bank. It borrows from the central bank. Bank of Uganda is our central bank. Uganda now has more debts from commercial bank than from central bank. We have more debts from commercial people. It reached a time last year, and that's what the president should be confirming to us, that we have now stopped, where the country was borrowing money from money lenders.
In Kenya.
In Kenya. So the president should be telling us today that we have stopped that bad habit of borrowing from money lenders. Now we have stabilized here. You don't hear that. We have a very big problem. Our education sector is almost collapsing. Somebody was giving an example here. For us who are educationists, we used to have so many students crossing from Tanzania, from Kenya to come and study here in secondary school and universities. the statistics have dropped drastically. In my university where I work, I don't think that we even have 1% of students coming from outside the country right now. Why? Because they have seen that there is a raw deal. Why? The curriculum is a cake. The teaching facilities are cake. The teachers are complaining every time. It's just that Ugandans are tired of strikes. But teachers would already be in strike now. But Ugandans are tired of strike. They take months without payment. Primary school teachers now take months without payment. So we would want a president to come and assure us, how do we deal with that? The health sector, Major was saying that now you walk to a clinic. You know, sometimes people assume that the life they are living is the life of everybody. People are suffering in hospitals. Those days when I was young, our nearest hospital was 7 kilometers. But if you went to that hospital, you would come back with medicine. You would have the risk of walking for so long, but you would come back with medicine. These days, people go to hospitals to only get prescription. You go, they give you prescription, and they tell you which tests you should take. Then they say, go and take them and bring results. Unprofessional. That I go and take tests, and I bring results. In all of these public hospitals, they have even told them now to go there, you must go with a book. They have nowhere to write. You have to go with a small exercise book where they are going to write for you medical notes, for you to go and buy tablets or medicine generally. So for me, I think, without going into sophisticated things that they were talking about, of macroeconomics, I don't know, microeconomics, for me, I want to simplify these things to food, to medicine, to sitting in a class, to paying my debts. To
employment.
Employment, because look at our children. Somebody was giving here an example which looked like fun. There is a huge danger for this country. When you just go to Entebbe airport and sit there for 3 hours, you want to rewrite the book, Cry My Country. You know that book? You want to rewrite it and now put Uganda into the context of that man who was writing Cry My Country. The people who are living Entebbe by statistics, the biggest number, 70% right now, are female young ladies. They are going to Oman. I was talking to one of them and I was asking, where are you going? At Saudi Arabia. To do what? To work. Have you been there? No, I'm going for the first time. And I was saying, oh, you don't know what is happening. But that's not the most dangerous thing. The most dangerous thing, you can now imagine, we have been boasting here that women are more than men. Very soon, our young men may not find somebody to marry. Because all these young girls are going there, and when they reach there, they are introduced into a new life that you cannot again come and pick such a girl and take her back to Kanyantorogo or Palabek or Maweto or any village, Barkworo, in any place in Uganda. And because they have already used to a certain lifestyle, you cannot take them back there. So the first thing that is going to collapse that we have been having, a family, this family thing that we have been talking about, very soon is going to cease. So somebody should be saying, how are they going to deal with that problem this year? That's what I want to hear in simple terms. Other than these speeches, I hear Maji, I don't know, he's talking about Nyabinji, I don't know which type of people. Those are very good for us to write good essays. They don't help us in dealing with the problems of 2024.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. And really the history and the detailed information.
No, there is a difference between, by the way. You may think that even the president is telling history. No, he's telling stories.
Thank you.
The storyteller.
Citizens Chat Show goes into a very short break and we shall be right back.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
You are still on Uganda's leading freedom platform, the Civic Space TV, and this is the Citizens Chat Show. I am Phillip Muliisa. Today, the chat is in Kololo. We are discussing the State of the Nation address by the President of the Republic of Uganda, and we are making sense of the many of the accountability he gave, the promises, and all the other things he talked about. Now, joining me in that conversation is Major Awich Pollar, Professor Mwambustya Ndebesa, Dr. Bireete, and Dr. Robert Ojambo. In the first session, we talked a lot about the challenges, and I think it is only just that we try to create a better image of what it should be like in this country. And if I start with you, Dr. Sarah, in the area of corruption, earlier in the segment, you talked about how we have a record-making speaker sanctioned. We have corruption, talked about the president. He talks about the connivance in the different departments and ministries, but also in local government. How best can this government fight this problem in this country?
Well, the means of fighting corruption are known. Our laws refer to corruption, abuse of office, theft as crimes. Crimes are fought using the law and other, the justice law and other sector agencies through investigation, prosecution, prevalent means, and otherwise. The actual performance of government is documented by Auditor General's reports. In every Auditor General's report, there is evidence of corruption. There is evidence of projects that have not been implemented. Actually, the Auditor General's reports are the state of performance of government. Parliament scrutinizes these reports, but that's where the conversation stops. There is no action beyond Parliament. So if a country was determined to fight corruption, after Parliament, then we would have Auditor General's reports together with the committee reports being processed by CID department and DPP for court prosecution. That's where the journey dies, from Parliament to CID. And CID is always represented at Parliament and some of the committees where even people take oath and then some are escorted to make statements. That's where our corruption journey in terms of state agencies dies. But why does it die there? Economies of countries are not developed by economists. They are developed by politicians. In Uganda, corruption is a method of governance for the regime to keep power. The president was quoted in Nairobi at an international meeting saying in Uganda you cannot fight the corrupt. The corrupt are very powerful. If you fight them, they will take you out of power. Everybody knows what should be done, especially President Museveni, who is the highest consumer of security information, national and international. He's the most informed citizen. That's why we refer to him as #1 citizen, fountain of honor. He consumes international intelligence reports as well as national intelligence reports. We have military attaches in all our embassies. We have external security officers who are spread globally getting intelligence that is related to the well-being of Uganda and Ugandans. We have Interpol office here, as well as our national security information. I want to juxtapose what I'm saying between the situation in Tanzania when His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete was in power. Security agencies got information that the Prime Minister then, under Jakaya Kikwete, Lowassa, was engaged in massive corruption that would cause a loss of confidence of the Tanzanian people in the government of President Jakaya Kikwete. The security chiefs briefed him. Lowassa was a close friend of Jakaya Kikwete, and through ANC ranks, then it had to take like a second decision in our case.
And CCM.
CCM ranks. To take a decision of the Central Executive Committee for Lowassa to be dropped from cabinet and may be prosecuted. So the security told the Jakaya Kikwete that you either take action, we advise you to drop your Prime Minister, you either take action or we shall not be in a position to defend you. And they left him after the brief. In the next 2 weeks, Jakaya had to drop Lowassa from cabinet as a Prime Minister, because it was either Lowassa or the people of Tanzania to react. That was the security briefing. In our case, you have a hemorrhage of resources in institutions. Security is always the first to know. They control the IFMIS, where every transaction from the Treasury is monitored at the Ministry of Finance and Bank of Uganda.
And the Financial Intelligence Authority.
Yes, it's represented there. So in our case, security gets this information, but keeps quiet. You have, stealing of taxpayers' money by Parliament, as we saw on social media, when now security, through agents in CMI, decided to release money that we've been seeing in social media. You have stealing in all government departments. You have fake projects like Roboa. You have, in the budget, every leader has billions of money for donations, every leader of the arm of government and the Prime Minister. The President has a huge budget for donations. Prime Minister has a huge budget for donations. Speaker has a huge budget for donations. Chief Justice has a huge budget for donations. So this NRM has reduced Uganda into a handout project that when you go, so they are like the colonialists who brought mirrors to our kings, and then a king is looking at their face for the first time and they say, carry all the citizens you want. So now the slavery is that they collect money from the people, then turn it into gifts, and every leader of arm of government is a Father Christmas roaming around Uganda. That is the first corruption, that you go dishing handouts, envelopes, sacks, instead of service delivery. And they want people to dance and drum for them wherever they go. The second issue is that security gets this information of corruption. The president, indeed, like he says, he knows all the corrupt, gets that information of corruption, and he knows what he should do, but he doesn't do it because he's looking at the next re-election. Let's give an example of the speaker. The speaker now being sanctioned by our partners in the international community, that the president is warning that if foreign agents, now being sanctioned by foreign agents who are friends of Museveni's government. The president must be calculating. Now in Bukedeha and Eastern Uganda, if I act about the speaker, who will campaign for me? Everybody in this country knows what should be done. But because we are in a perpetual re-election mood, the first calculation is votes. Other countries are able to act because you need 2 terms, you need 1 re-election. So when a government is fresh in power, they are acting on their manifesto, their passion, what they've been advocating for. The first 100 days, the first 1 year, they are eager to deliver. The second re-election, they are thinking of a legacy. Uhuru Kenyatta had to create a legacy project that anybody who steps in Nairobi must know that those are the footprints of Uhuru. Some of them were in the pipeline and they had to conclude them, but he's the man who officiated those projects. Those are footprints nobody will ever take away. In our situation here, 1 election is done, the next day is re-election. Shall we retain power? 40 years, 50 years, 100 years? So as a result, we have frogs climbing on house roofs in terms of corruption.
Wow. Professor, you so much talk about the issue of national consensus, unity, representation, inclusivity, regional balance, and so on. And this government seems not to be acting. Maybe they are puzzled. They do not know what to do. What can they do to see that we attain this kind of status in the country?
No, thank you for that question. This government is manned by intellectuals, so it is not that they don't know what they want to do. The issue is not ignorance here. The issue is norms, the norms that people have in their mind, not lack of information or evidence. That is not true at all. It is like you find somebody, you have to translate from the head to the heart, as it were. You don't think that a priest who is involved in pedophilia doesn't know that that one will not attain him salvation, or a doctor who smokes doesn't know that smoking is dangerous to his life. But he will continue to smoke because the norms are different. So even in issues of fighting corruption, if I can also touch on the issue of corruption, is that corruption cannot be fought by legal means now, where we have reached, because it has been normalized. We have to move away from the legal framework of fighting corruption to the normative framework of fighting corruption. Because corruption is now structural, is normalized, and is institutionalized. Now that corruption cannot be fought from the legal point of view. It has to be from the norms point of view and addressed politically. The biggest corruption in Uganda is political. It is not financial. We need to redefine corruption. We have concentrated on abuse of office for private gains, mainly embezzlement, maybe some little bit of fraud. But corruption is far, 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 far wider. Even tribalism is corruption, isn't it?
It is.
You need to go to any of these big offices and you see the head of the institution. I have said it time and again. And normally they sit on top, or very up, if it is a solid building like 10th floor. When you go to the first floor where normally the personal assistants sit, and the messenger, and the driver, and the bodyguard, and all that. When you reach there on first floor, and you want to know which tribe the one on 10th floor belongs to, just sit down and listen to these people down there. They will be short waving. And that goes on up to the 10th floor. When somebody goes there, he starts appointing people from his area or our area. Now that is corruption. Let me touch on the is it IFRIS or whatever, this one which the traders had striked about.
IFRIS.
Yes. Let me tell the listeners out there and the nation, actually the traders are not saying what they want to say. Or whether they lack the courage, or they lack the means, or of articulation or communication, I don't know. They are complaining that there are people in Uganda who pay tax and others dodge tax.
True.
That's what they are complaining about. There are those who don't pay tax, and you see them constructing high rises, buying land everywhere. But if you go to the Revenue Authority, you find that there are no returns. They have not paid tax commensurate to what they have. What have they done? They have dodged tax. Was it dodging illegally, just hiding? No. It is official. They go, they know how to talk to the right connected people, and they dodge tax. Incidentally, it brings in a paradox or an irony. We say that Ugandans, we are overtaxed. But how come that Uganda has the least tax collection ratio to GDP? I don't know whether the listener out there understands what I mean. When you look at the tax to ratio of GDP in Uganda, Uganda collects the least in East Africa. Uganda Revenue Authority is the worst performer in tax collection in East Africa. The others collect, we collect between 13 and 14% of ratio to GDP. Others collect 15, 17. Kenya at one time was collecting 20. Why? Why is that so? And yet Ugandans are complaining. Ugandans are complaining because tax falls on a few. And it is not the wealthiest, the richest, who are paying tax. It is actually the poorest who are paying the tax. That is corruption. During elections, you know very well that corruption becomes normal. Everybody knows that when you go to canvass for votes, you pay. You pay. Actually, the peasants know that you have to pay. Omumiro, you clear my throat. That's what they say. That's what they say. Now, and it is normal. You know, we laugh about it. The peasants know about it. The voters know about it. The political class know about it.
They do.
Corruption has become so normal that if you are in a certain high position of government and you don't embezzle, actually people abuse you. Say, what's wrong with the son of so and so? How can you be given that position and you look poor and you don't give us money? How can you be in such a position and you don't employ people here? And when that person challenges himself that I want to be a nationalist, the peasants or the ordinary people will say, but the so and so is employing his people. What about you? No. That means corruption has become normal. Now, when corruption has become normalized and institutionalized and structuralized, this business of talking about having institutional framework, we have institutions in place, we have the laws in place, we have this in place, that will not solve corruption. It is the norms now we have to work on. Because if we don't work on the norms, for the clarity to the listeners, norms actually are also laws, but they are unwritten laws. And those are the ones which govern our behavior. Those are the ones which will put this country back to the footing, not these other written laws. So, the country has normalized corruption. The country has normalized misbehavior. You know, in Uganda, and for the case of NRM, actually, I have a director here. If you do not become an extremist, in other words, to be a good NRM, you must be an extremist. You must abuse opposition. You must make sure that they don't talk.
Professor, I have not abused anybody here, and I'm a director.
We don't know other things you are doing other than abusing. Abusing is one of them. And that is why you are not an MP. And try to be an MP and you see whether they will vote for you. You have to be an extremist. You remember the case of when they were talking about the Euro girls?
Yes.
Those are the people who went to Chankwanzi and were kneeling and were abusing anybody who had an alternative view, and they were, before we knew it, they were ministers. So,
Fisher women.
So in order to be promoted, you must be intolerant. And yet that is not how we build consensus in the nation. To build consensus in the nation, we must listen to each other's alternative views, even if you don't believe in it. But if...
Information, Professor.
Yes.
The gentleman who showed his obscenity attacking Kabaka is now another CC. Was given as a one who showed his
from Chiboga.
Yes. Is now a representative of the president.
Actually, if you are not a moderate, if you are a moderate, you won't get high ranking. Actually, sometimes to be a cadre, you must be intolerant. You must demonstrate that you are intolerant to an alternative
Professor,
viewpoint.
I am very tolerant.
I am a professor of society. I am an intellectual of society. I know that in Uganda, extremism is rewarded and tolerance is punished. By the way, for the information of the listeners, this is not the case of only NRM. Even UPC used to behave like that. If you are not an extremist person to hate DP and mishandle DPs and make sure they don't talk, you would not be promoted in UPC. We thought that we would have a new model of politics where tolerance is rewarded, but instead extremism is rewarded. I am an extremist and therefore I am the right person to be promoted. I think we need to turn around and say, no, let's promote certain values that promote a national consensus. Even in police, by the way, in security forces, if you don't harass the opposition clearly, they will demote you or they will transfer you. You will go to the embassy. They want that one who will make sure that he harasses the opposition. And when you do that one, that is a credential for promotion on the job.
Shoots at a political leader.
To me, that one is not building a nation. And when we don't have a nation, we can easily disintegrate.
True.
So I would say, to summarize what you had asked, is that the most important or the priority of a country would be to build a nation state. The British left us with a polarized society through their indirect rule. They were also extremists, by the way, the British here. If you became a moderate, the British, they would demote you. They wanted somebody who was a typical sycophant. And those are the people who would be promoted. So that legacy continued. And it has continued. When are we going to tolerate each other? Even if you don't agree to somebody's viewpoint, tolerate them. If you disagree with somebody, disagree, yes, but don't be an extremist. And the government should not promote those who are extremists. But again, when you are a good civil servant or a political servant and you don't embezzle and accumulate funds, they will not vote you.
No, but also in the system, they will drop you because you are a problem.
That started with Changamacho. There was a late Changamacho, actually, who was so clean and exposing socialist principles. He went back to the Electoral. They said, you, Changamacho, you are not corrupt. You have not brought us a big car. You have not employed our people in Samia. You have not done it before. He's from there. You remember?
Yes.
They rejected him.
I know him.
So it is very, 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 very dangerous for a country to promote extremists and those who are intolerant and those who have not accumulated. If you don't accumulate a lot, they will think you are foolish. That you must go in a very big car when you are going home, splash some money to the population. When you go to church, you give a lot of money and you become flamboyant, you move around in expensive suits in the tropical Africa, black suits in tropical Africa, and then they will say,
you deny that one also.
We are living in a poor country, but this business of extravagance. So one of the challenges of this government, by the way, is extravagance. And that is why, finally, that in the State of the Nation address, we should be, the president should be also responding to people's outcries and concerns. One of the outcries and concerns in this country is high public administration expenditure. They have been saying, let's reduce on this public administration expenditure so that the money, that the little we have, is spent on priority areas for developing the country economically or socially. But every time you hear ministers' numbers are increasing, MPs have increased, councillors have increased, RDCs have increased, advisors have increased, this one has increased. So now how can we put money in consumption and expect development? As I conclude, you find in Uganda an anomaly where even the little development we are having development, yes, but it is not translated in livelihoods. You find that now, if we go to Kampala, there is a lot of private development in terms of infrastructure, buildings and all that. But the government is poor. The government infrastructure is very, 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 very dismal. Roads, sewage and all that. Why? That shows you that there is a lot of public corruption. And therefore, instead of money coming to government, it is individuals who are not paying their due tax. And therefore, the Ifris people are complaining, but they are not saying exactly what they are complaining about. They are saying, we are not equal in terms of tax. There is unfair taxation. Tax falls on a few, on some individuals, but the foreigners who are investors are not paying their due tax, and some connected people, the right connected people, are also dodging taxes, and therefore taxes is falling on us. But they have just woken up and talked about this instrument. But in effect, if you went and asked Kasita down there, they know that there are people who import things in this country without paying due tax. And that is a problem. It is a landmine in our politics in Uganda if we do not address the question of inequality, equal access to resources, public resources, but also equal access to opportunities, but also equality in taxation. There is high inequality in taxation in this country, and people, we are likely to see more rebellions because of unequal taxation that is going in this country, where Uganda is said to be overtaxed, and yet the tax to GDP ratio in Uganda is the lowest in the region. Why? Has anybody asked himself why? It means those who are complaining are few. There are those who are not complaining because they are evading tax.
Thank you so much, Professor. Dr. Ojambo, Professor talks about the taxes, and we know earlier you talked about us having little money to even finance the consumption and the debt alone. How do we, in this era, and for government in that matter, improve the standards, improve the ways we operate such that there is room for innovation, there is room for entrepreneurship, and we are talking about technology such that this economy can have enough money to finance its projects?
Yeah, I have said this several times. Unless somebody ends this project, Museveni. Because for you are talking about improving people's lives, improving what, that is not the aim of this government.
But if the sorry to intervene, if the problem is systemic and normative, even if you remove Museveni, you can have somebody who is worse than Museveni.
I don't normally fear the future. I have been arguing that Project Museveni creates its own system and structure to maintain it. So for you to remove Museveni, you must deal with the Project Museveni. Because Project Museveni is a very complicated structure in Uganda. To an extent that when they are budgeting in our country, they are not budgeting to improve the welfare of the people. Is how can we encourage these people to vote for us? And that's why they come up with some makeshift programs like this Myoga, and then now we have PDM. And the issue is that the economist has gone to read for the president that if we did this and people saw that we are giving them some little money, they will vote for us. I have always told you alternative. The alternative for Uganda is not to help people with the money. Because even if you give them money, I saw a person in West Nile got the Myoga money and went and bought alcohol for their people, and when the police caught them, he said, but the president gave us this money for empowering ourselves. And for me, I'm empowered when I take some alcohol. And the man seemed in his own sense to be sensible, although he was speaking a lot of nonsense. But that money, if it was put, for example, instead of bringing these Chinese, I don't have any problem with the Chinese, to start here plastic companies, to make a small paper industry, or these metal fabrications in Namamve and wherever, the so-called metal that I heard the president in his state of address was saying that we are producing 600 million metric ton, 600,000 metric tons, but we are targeting 1,500 million metric tons, and the market is 3 million. That would boost, number one, you boost production, and two, people would get employment. Long ago when we were studying geography, Jinja was the industrial town of Uganda. And therefore, that's why when you go to Jinja, you find that it's one of the most cosmopolitan towns in Uganda. In fact, Jinja in most cases is East Africa summarized. What made it to look so? People were leaving all parts of the country to go and work in those industries. Because at that time, that's where we had most of the industries there. Today, I don't know what people go to Jinja to do. Maybe to see the bridge, the long bridge, because the source of the Nile, no Ugandan can leave their home that they are going to see the source of the Nile. So now what is the problem? All the pressure has come to Kampala, because that's where you can get a job, even riding a border. You have to come to Kampala. So instead of wasting money, giving people money to do nothing, if the government would start such things, to produce, for example, soap, and start small industries. I don't know whether a district cannot run a small industry. They will tell you, but this is, this is liberalization. I think they read bad economics. Liberalization does not mean that now you leave your people to chance of the market forces. No, liberalization means that you allow the private entrepreneurs to come in to add on money on investment. In Uganda, he was talking about the houses, why government has fewer houses and the private people have houses. The NRF government has come up with a trick. And Museveni one time talked of making a middle income. And people thought, how do you make a middle income? Little did we know that he was going to give money to private individuals. They give you money, you invest, and the money becomes yours, not for the government. You have heard this man, Magola. I have said this severally here. Magola has been earning money from every supplementary. By the end of this budget, and we are not yet sure because the government of Uganda can bring a supplementary next week when they are closing the statement of account, has been given now 776 billion shillings to build a machine which is going to do for us a vaccine for ticks. That money, to give you perspective, can run Kyambogo University, MUBS, Mbarara, Science and Technology, Pusitema University, and Soroti University. Because I know their budgets. Kyambogo University is about 133 billion shillings. The other ones are in 50s, 50. And so you can imagine a president sits with knowledgeable people and they advise him that to develop a vaccine, you need to get a muyaye called Magola. Because Magola is not a known scientist. We have been searching what did he study, he's not known among the scientists of Uganda. But you give him 767 billion theft. How much money has been given to Pineti to construct a hospital? To construct a hospital. And the only thing the woman is doing is to germinate grass. So the money, all the money that we have been giving her is just to help the grass to germinate. They have surrounded the grass. Look at how much money has been given to Atiak Sugar. Atiak Sugar in this supplementary had 156 billion. And what are they going to do? Atiak has not yet started producing, that they are reconstructing the factory. And the allegation was that it was burnt. Now, you look at these people. So, Uganda, I don't agree with the people who say that we don't have money. We have money, But this money is being used badly to protect Project Museveni. I am very sure this money goes back to Museveni, because the Museveni, the way I know him, is not a fool, that people can fool him and take money which can fund 6 universities to do nothing, and he just keeps quiet. So if this money, for example, just imagine, if that money had been given to the Viral Institute in Entebbe to come up with a vaccine for tsetse flies, they will do it because they have the machinery, they have the experts, they have everybody. They would even employ so many people in the universities, in departments of chemistry, departments of biochemistry. There will be young people who will be enrolled to do research and so on. They are giving it to Magola, who has no idea. You remember that Magola is the same man who was supposed to do for us a COVID vaccine. I don't know where they ended with Musenero. They gave them 80 billion shillings. I don't know where they ended. So Sarah was talking about Auditor General. If there is a very frustrating job to do in Uganda, is to be an Auditor General. Because your work is to bring facts and nothing happens about them. Lastly, I really think that Ugandans need to get interested in what happens in the country. I have seen that majority of Ugandans have only gone to complaining. They complain about everything. They don't know what they can do. Things need to change from down, and nobody is going to cause that change to the people. So I think the duty of anybody who speaks to people, 2, 3, 4 people, is to tell them the predicament that we have, so that we can end this Project Museveni. And this Project Museveni, when it's still going on, you will be saying the same things on this show for the next time when he's still around here.
Thank you so much. Major, you listen to all the challenges the 3 panelists talk about, the corruption and how it is systemic, the extremism, the failure to build a nation state, and what Dr. Ojambo has just talked about. Is the NRM willing to pick up on this advice and act to see that this country prospers?
Yes, NRM is willing, and it has been demonstrating the willingness to the extent that the people have been trusting it and voting for it. Because the voting has been because the people have been following their willingness. So the willingness is there. Whether you put it in the economic term, the interventions are there, and especially now in the interventions that the doctor criticizes and puts, that will rather than bring, you rather give the money somewhere else. PDM and this project are really things which are thought over by people equally doctors like Dr. Ojambo. So if he has an alternative view, it is good he's bringing it, but it is not one agenda item that came from nowhere. It's a project which was thought over by several doctors and agreed on the modality. If it is wrong, that was our view, and it is being implemented. And the President in the State of Nation address says that the people are now getting to be aware, they're taking advantage of it. So you can have alternative views, but that is what we so far done. So that is the economic interventions. On the corruption intervention, we have already said that we have things like, first of all, like Professor said, you need the political will. Of course, debates have been raised whether or not the political will is there, but I assure you the political will is there. And that is why when the Mabati thing came up, people were wondering what the president would do. Of course, as a president, you don't react the same day. He knew the timing. And of course, the 2 ministers were relieved. And that shows the political will that we have. Now, again, make me tie up on the issue of intelligence and the consumption that Sarah talked about. Our intelligence are doing the good job. And that's why we have security in the whole country. We boast of security. Colleagues, even in Kenya, it is public knowledge that some time back there was a region in Kenya where there was no school. Schools were closed due to insecurity. Then some young girl cried about reopening of the school, the young girl had to be taken up to President Ruto to be cooled down because she cried about schools being closed because of insecurity. I can assure you the security you have in Uganda, you can't even close a parish due to insecurity. This means intelligence are doing work. And, for example, the Mabati iron seed. The Mabati iron seed was discovered by intelligence. When the intelligence tricked one of the minister's mother who was selling iron seeds in Umbale, and it was Isu. Isu purportedly bought the iron seeds from the mother, and that is when the thing were known. So the intelligence are doing their part.
Major, if you allow me on that particular issue, we have a sanctioned speaker, we have a sanctioned minister, we have a sanctioned presidential advisor. What can summon resignation in the NRM party if such an act cannot make an official of the NRM resign from office?
And the parliamentary commissioners.
Resignations, I think we have had a bit of history of resignations, and it happens to serious cadres. Otafire resigned. Otafire resigned, you know, and you know the cadre of caliber of Otafire.
You've got to the house.
Do you know?
But now, how do you
These
give us
ones
an
are not
example?
the- are
How do you
not
give us an
serious.
example of a serious person and then you say Otafire?
Anyway, maybe I talk very sweet things.
No,
and
he's
it
serious,
causes
but
your,
he
it causes
resigned
your
and came back.
intervention. It causes
Phillip is
your
not a
intervention.
serious
But me,
man.
I always take time to listen. So I would imagine by the same token that you listen what I'm saying. Otherwise, unless you're saying it is only the discipline of NRM cadres who listen to others. Then the rest of you who are in discipline, you interpret it, you intervene anyhow. So I'm saying we have history of resignations. And Otafire is on record to have resigned before. So for these others, it's a personal decision. And we always give them the chance. And if they don't resign, like the case of the ministers of Karamoja, then you saw what happened. But resignation is a personal thing, and we expect that everybody has a conviction, has a moral judgment, and can do that. But should you not do that, and for us as a party and government feel you are short of that, and that is what happens, and you saw in the issue of the Karamoja ministers.
Doesn't that affect the performance of NRM? The Minister of Finance is sanctioned. A Minister of Finance.
Minister of State for Finance.
Yes.
Be clear. You see, we are talking to the world. Now, if you make, what would you lose? Instead of saying the Minister for Finance, what would you lose by adding the word state?
Both of
You
them.
see, when you say that, you want to influence opinion, and it is dangerous and risky. We are talking to the entire world. This is online and other people are watching. So it is a Minister of State for Finance. You don't lose any money by adding the word state. So let's put the strict sense. So it is true the Minister of State for Finance has been sanctioned. As I told you, it's a moral decision. We are all watching, including the Speaker. But as I told you, if they don't take moral decisions, we have avenues. And history has attested to us that the case of the Karamoja ministers, when they failed to take up a moral stand of resignation, you saw what happened. So why don't you give us a benefit of the time in this situation? Now, there are other matters that were raised about education. And you see, Uganda was among the first countries to take up the implementation of liberalism. And to some extent, our people cried that we overdid it. For example, some people thought we couldn't even over-liberalize like electricity or banks. So we took the World Bank IMF policy so quickly, and it impacted our education and its quality. That is why Kenya, Tanzania came. But remember, these services are operating on supply and demand. So the Kenyans were not sleeping and the Tanzanians. When they saw buses coming here, planes bringing students, they would say, I think this is area of investment. So they also invested. And that is why it has reversed the trend. We are operating in a supply and demand situation. But we were ahead of them. We in the liberalization of the education. Remember the Kenyan students who are coming were coming nearly to private schools like the St. Lawrence and then the KU private universities. Because
Even in Makerere, they were there.
yes, because Uganda had taken, but even in Uganda still we have the East African Exchange Program, We still have it. But on commercial basis, it is reversed for simply supply and demand factor. Those countries also woke up and said, hey, you mean we are losing all this to Uganda? Let us also start. So you can explain that in that way. Let me comment about the issue of labor migration. Labor migration has been stated here over and again like an NRM failure. Colleagues and viewers, you see the labor status in the country, in the world, is that there is inequality of labor supply. I have repeatedly said I was in Germany and I boarded a bus. And when I reached home, I told my host, a professor, that professor, it looks like I boarded an elderly bus. He said, why? He said, the youngest person in the bus was 65. He said, but that is the population here. There are no young children. Therefore, population and labor is unequally distributed in the world. That is why United Nations came up with a convention called Convention on Migrant Workers. Phillips, you will agree with me that by the time a law comes in place, it comes to address a mischief. A law does not come from nowhere. So the world had realized that there is labor imbalance. So the labor migration that you're seeing in Middle East is not a Ugandan thing. If it was a Ugandan thing, it would not have attracted a convention on migrant workers for the entire world. For your information, Philippines supplies 11 million workers abroad, mainly nurses. Mexico, 11 million workers in USA. In fact, Mexican acted a film to say 1 minute without a Mexican, because they were saying United States was being proud. Let's see how they will be proud without our labor. So colleagues, labor migration is a world phenomenon. It's not the inability of anyone. If anything, we supply the least labor manpower abroad. Now, I wanted to talk about, I think I mentioned corruption, but only that to say political will and moral will, including religious moral will. I agree with the professor that we'd have to move forward to normative instead of legislative, because they know how to avoid it. And we have tested legislative or legal proceedings. But even in churches know who is corrupt. And the guys come to give money and they're given front seats.
So
and they are respected.
church to fight corruption?
We all need to come together, Sarah.
I agree.
We have to preach against it. So church is no exception in the admission of the people and also in the messages that they send.
No, I agree that church should fight corruption. But that's the moral side. The state has a primary duty.
That is why we are saying that we should even build anti-corruption prison. So we are saying it is both normative and legalistic. We are not leaving the other one. Then also the aspect of economic interventions. Because there are some people who would, at a small scale, intervene in wrongdoing, not because it's really corrupt, but because it's hard up. So that's why government has to intervene in moral, economic interventions. We're talking PDM and all this, so that people can meet their means, and therefore you reduce the temptation. Finally, I think I'm talking of the moderate and the extremists.
And the reward incentives.
Well, I think you have cited a few examples, but I can tell you that the NRM revolutionary methods of work does not praise that. For us in NRM, especially those who have been in NRA proceeding to UPDF, and now we know the revolutionary methods of work. The incidences that you see are way outside our methods of work, and I think if it impacts greatly on the movement as a party, it will be dealt with. But we are moderate there. I'm one person who has been here and everywhere. I've never insulted anybody. I've never been a moderate. I'm friends to all of you. And we think that this is how we should live in a civilized way to exchange views. If the other one, the moderator, insulting, they're saying NRM, they are not, look at me. I am the one. I am the one who doesn't abuse. I am the moderator. Have I been chased?
You are promoted for other factors. It is not the only factor
Have I been
of
chased?
extremism.
So have I been chased for being non-critical? Then on the issue of black suits, no. You see, I am one person who puts on black suits, but Professor knows that my history, I'm an advocate. So by fact of being an advocate, we put on suits, and you know, from before I came here, could have come from courts, and our law says the color of court shall be black and white, and the language of court shall be English. So if you go in nothing other than black and white, the judge will say, I don't see you.
Yeah.
I can't see you. So that's why some of us put black and white. But also I've been a diplomat for 8 years in Geneva, Switzerland, the headquarters of diplomacy. So I'm used to it. But
I was not referring to you.
But maybe my colleagues also have the same background. Finally,
you have developed those tests.
Finally, still,
bourgeois, we call them bourgeois tests.
Still, along the same line, we should judge other cadres in their own right. For example, the issue of recruiting relatives. In my office, I have 3 lawyers. All of them are Banyankole, not Elangi.
So why did you choose only from one tribe?
Because I found them competent. I found them competent. So I interviewed many.
She's competent. Are you going to give
I interviewed many.
ordered
So I interviewed many.
He was
But now,
ordered.
if I was tribalistic, I would have picked the Langis. But the checklist was very clear. The marks they scored was
You
very
pick
clear.
the Langis, you all go.
I picked the Langis. No. You see, doctor is jumping on his goalpost to the next. Doctor, they found me there. How would I all go if they found me there? Doctor knows very well that if I was to go, I would have gone. I've been there since childhood. I've been a Kadogo in NRA. So if I was to go, would have been chased to those long time ago. So I'm not about to go because I adhere to the ideals and the revolution of the movement.
Survival.
Yeah, that's a survival strategy.
Thank you, Major, for that, and I hope the next time we discuss the state of the nation, it will be good news only, talking to us about how unemployment has been solved, how corruption has
Can you
been
hear
addressed,
anything?
how the national issue has been, and so many others. Thank you so much for the deliberation, and let's start with you, Doctor, briefly. What's the way forward?
I think we need to get better, where the president comes deliberately to give us a State of Nation address, and that State of Nation address should be tackling to give us hope of how they have done things to change what didn't happen last year properly. Not to tell people stories of when they were in Mozambique, when they went to see Kaunda, then when they did this. These are really things that we can read in books at our free time. Right now, people want to see how we can get out of this very hard situation that we have. Major there was saying that the economy is not doing badly. The economy is really terrible. You can see from our debt rates, you can see from the state of the roads and everything, that the state of the hospitals, the states of the schools. We are really doing badly. We need people who can work and give us an accountability of what they have done in 365 days. Not what they did when we were not yet born. That one, keep it for your grandchildren in the evening. They can be told those stories.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Sarah.
Good politics produce good economics. We lack thinkers for Uganda's future. The NRM mentality has created the problems we are in. They are in no place to solve them. Our economy can be fixed by getting modern thinkers. For example, the digital global economy, which is at $17 trillion, is projected to be $38 trillion in 3 years. In Uganda's planning, you don't hear any serious talk on the digital economy. We have had closure of Facebook for 4 years, yet Facebook has 58% users of digital platform, bigger than all the other platforms. So that shows you that the current leaders are in no place to solve our challenges. As compared to gold and coffee, gold stands at $13.7 trillion, when the digital economy is at 17, and coffee is 500 billion. So our planning is coffee. We are not even planning gold, which we don't know where it comes from and does not pay tax. But we have youth who can be absorbed by digital economy, and also that's the moving economy globally.
Well, Professor.
I want to make just quick concluding remarks that for effective governance in this country, which should be talked about in such a State of the Nation address, we have to reward uprightness. We have to reward hard working. We have to reward less corrupt people. But what has happened in Uganda, in our governance system, we reward the crooks, we reward the less hard working, we reward the inefficient people. Now, once in the political appointments and other perks that you give to the extremists, you give to the crooks, you give to the corrupt, you give to the inefficient, then everybody will say the best thing to do when you are in the government is to be a crook. And that is how the country is going to go in the wrong direction. That is my take. That is what has been happening. We don't reward hard work, we reward inefficiency. Just because somebody is very royal. That is a challenge that this country is having.
Thank you so much. Major.
Concluding remark indeed for me. Here is the State of the Nation address. We are happy that we are presenting it. We hope that we have presented it and captures the aspirations of the people as reflected objectively. The packaging may vary, but we have packaged it, the President has packaged it. We hope that with good running shall present another one next year, still capturing the aspirations and the interest of Ugandans.
Thank you so much, and I hope in that other one you'll be presenting, it will be a good story to present. Thank you, Major, for the deliberation and for making time for the show. Professor, thank you so much for finding time for the show. Dr. Bireete, thank you so much for the deliberation and finding time for the show. And Dr. Ojambo, thank you so much for finding time to be here. And to you, our viewers, thank you so much for keeping it the Citizens Chat show. Special thanks to the Center for Constitutional Governance. We appreciate the work you do to make sure all this is together. Special thanks to the people behind the machines. You do a good job, and we say good evening, and may you have freedom always.